I have chosen you, my child. I remained vigilant without uttering a word. While the entire world devalued and ignored you, the heavenly gates recorded every detail. This declaration is not a mere transmission. It is a validation coming directly from the divine realms. You know the wounds that tormented you deeply, the internal fractures that tore you apart, and the truths you had to swallow to preserve the remnants of structure in your journey. Many souls condemned you based solely on superficial appearances, but I lift you up in recompense for what only my eternal eyes have witnessed. For in the moment when earthly voices presumed your abandonment, you persisted in unwavering worship. When they mocked your stumbles, you planted seeds of loyalty in the deepest recesses. You endured trials hidden from all human eyes. You fought in the shadows without fanfare. You offered worship in absolute darkness. You sowed seeds amid sobs and tears. Despite everything, you pressed forward, guided by absolute trust. This proclamation serves as your reflection in the spiritual realm, an explicit manifestation from on high. If your inner being has sensed an imminent tension of breaking, that feeling does not arise from nothingness. I have already decreed my sovereign choice. I raise you up, not because of isolated actions, but for the uninterrupted persistence in your conduct. On this occasion, you will understand the reasons for my satisfaction with you and why the higher realms prepare to honor you with supreme dignity. However, first, if your essence already vibrates intensely, perform a symbolic and prophetic act. Show approval of this message, join the channel if you haven't already, and write the number 99 in the comments if you perceive that my hand has sustained you in existence up to this very moment, for the destined path approaches its full consummation. Present yourself prepared. What will unfold next transcends human encouragement. It constitutes a supernatural ignition. There are phases in the existence of those I have marked as mine that escape collective understanding, not due to inherent invisibility, but because of their incompatibility with the mediocre sensitivity of the masses. And you have lived through one of those crucial stages, a dark abyss, where every surrounding element clamored for your total paralysis. A barren vastness, where my silence resonated louder than any mortal echo. Yet, you stood firm. You had the option to retreat in defeat. You could have sealed the sacred scriptures. You could have rejected my presence, invoked curses, or simply abandoned all aspiration. You had abundant justifications, but you chose a singular certainty to maintain unshakable faith. That conviction was not like the polished faith displayed on digital platforms. It was not a belief adorned with virtual praise, fleeting applause, or refined declarations. It was a raw, authentic trust, the kind that endures only when the foundations tremble violently, the kind that emerges when the intellect exhausts its searches and only total surrender remains. You did not trust because events aligned logically. You trusted despite the complete absence of apparent rationality. And that stance is precisely what stirred my paternal essence. For anyone can exercise faith in times of smooth prosperity, but you exercised it precisely when chaos shattered everything around you. I beheld you in those nocturnal hours when you lay prostrate in silence, reduced to streams of tears. I saw you when you raised praise amid the collapse of your reality, when you persisted in service despite internal cracks, when you displayed an outward smile while your being cried out for urgent relief. That is the trust capable of moving rocky peaks, of opening heavenly portals, of earning my eternal esteem. And though the scene suggested absolute stagnation, the angelic hosts were tirelessly mobilized on your behalf. The righteous will endure by trust, as proclaimed in the inspired pages. Yet no one warned you that sustaining yourself by trust sometimes means sacrificing personal ambitions, burying cherished aspirations, and pressing forward even when directions are obliterated by fire. And do you see what I have done with your trust? I transformed it into deep foundations. Foundations that anchored you while countless others succumbed to the abyss. Foundations that sustained you during prolonged droughts. Foundations that now connect uninterruptedly to the living current of my spiritual presence. This is why I raise you up today. Not for the absence of questions in your heart, but for your refusal to capitulate, even with doubts echoing within. You passed the most rigorous test. You chose to trust at the height of agony, and that determination is the criterion that qualifies you for glorious ascent. For I do not prioritize those most acclaimed by the crowd. I value the most resilient, and you have distinguished yourself among them. Therefore prepare yourself for what is to come. Those who presumed your definitive end will witness the most radiant dawn of your narrative. Yet this is merely the prelude, for the subsequent developments will clarify why the celestial reserves delayed your reward and why the open unveiling of your backstage achievements approaches. Stay vigilant. What will resound in your ears may entirely reconfigure your perspective. There is an aspect that humanity will never grasp about those truly appointed by me. Submission in moments of total invisibility. The willingness to say, "Here I am, Father," in the absence of tangible guarantees, immediate returns, applause, digital approvals, or public distinctions. You experience this in its essence. You submitted to my will when such adherence defied all reason, when my directives caused acute suffering, when it appeared as a total loss of possessions, when I commanded wait patiently, while the flow around you accelerated, when I instructed keep silent, and your impulse was to proclaim your version to the four winds, when I directed release from your hands, and it represented your last refuge. You obeyed, not because the path was simple, but because you recognized my sovereign authority. And therein lies the stumbling block for so many. Submitting openly is accessible. Adopting obedience under watchful eyes, amidst celebrations of piety, under praise for apparent holiness, requires moderate effort. But your submission was radically different. It germinated in the private sanctuary, in the sphere inaccessible to others, in the realm where choices stem not from cold calculations, but from profound reverence. You refused to barter with your loyalty. You chose to forego professional opportunities, emotional ties, and even material security, rather than break intimacy with me. Such conduct is exceptional, transformative, and precisely what shakes the foundations of paradise. Do you understand what the Creator has done with that veiled submission? I inscribed it in the eternal records. Yes, every act of adherence was catalogued in the higher realms, as if each gesture were traced with divine essence in an imperishable volume. While you interpreted the void as inactivity, the celestial realms were crafting your crown of glory. And now listen closely. You are entering the era where I begin to publicly display those who served me in seclusion. Because your surrender flowed from genuine affection, not from a pursuit of admiration. Therefore, the angelic assemblies celebrate your journey at this moment, and there is more in store. Your submission not only safeguarded you, it strategically aligned you. While others propelled themselves by fleeting impulses, you awaited my clear guidance. And though the delay seemed like obsolescence, in reality, I was hiding you to bring you forth in perfect, irrevocable timing. Those I serve, the Heavenly Father will exalt. That promise was not meant for seekers of notoriety, but for the faithful in submission, regardless of the cost in discretion, invisibility, or self-denial. And now I proclaim, the time has come to exalt those who revered me in the shadows. Do you feel that resonance in your spiritual core? For if this message has already moved you deeply, the elements to come transcend mere enlightenment. They represent a celestial impact that will expand your vision to unprecedented depths. The true essence of why I isolated you and the enigma underlying so much silence. Prepare yourself. The insights approaching will give meaning to every sacrifice endured. Exclusion did not wound you superficially just once. It pierced you like a subtle, merciless blade, one that avoids visible scars but drains internal vitality over extended periods, stretching into weeks, months, or even entire cycles. You were betrayed by those who professed affection. You were disregarded by the same ones who once applauded you. You were cast aside without apparent justification, yet you did not harden into bitterness. You had the capacity to toughen your sensitivity. You could have retaliated with equal venom. You could have built impenetrable walls and declared, "I will never trust again. I will never allow affection again." And such stances would have had logical support. Many take that route. Many cloak themselves in indifference to immunize against repeated pain, but you rejected that path. You chose to preserve internal integrity, and that was not weakness, but bravery in the realm of the soul. For nothing is more challenging than maintaining innocence in an environment saturated with treachery and impurity. I observed your journey in those moments when you projected external serenity, but internally carried unresolved questions, when the urge to surrender presented itself, but you chose intentional forgiveness, not by spontaneous emotion, but by the realization that releasing resentment was the only antidote to the corrosion of your divine purpose. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see my face. Does that statement echo in your memory? Inner purity is not achieved through melodious hymns or empty rituals. It is forged in the furnace of relentless rejection, covert desertion, and exposed ridicule. In those scenarios, it is revealed whether your essence remains aligned with eternal principles or tainted by accumulated resentment. And you chose alignment. The affliction was intense, no doubt, but you prevented that torment from shaping you into the image of your aggressors. You persisted in love, in sustained belief, in continuous sowing. And here is the mystery that escapes most. Rejection acted as a sieve that validated your celestial origin. For if you did not fit into their flock, it was a sign that I had set you apart for higher missions. Do you wish to understand the reason for the exclusion? They lacked the vision to discern the treasure I implanted in your being. Your radiance disturbed them. Your humility dismantled their schemes. Your calling resonated with authority beyond their narratives. They did not marginalize you for inherent insufficiency. They marginalized you because my indelible mark upon you transcended their capacity for comprehension. And now I transform that same marginalization into the ideal stage for your vindication. For those who uphold inner purity receive from me prophetic glimpses, reserved confidences, and positioning with authentic spiritual power. So absorb this carefully. The trauma did not mark the end, but the portal of transition, and you crossed it, preserving your primordial identity. Therefore, the higher hosts spread before you a bountiful feast, precisely before the eyes of those who once diminished you. And if your perception detects an imminent eruption in the invisible dimensions, that intuition is not random, for the next aspect will unveil the latent strength of a resolution you made in absolute solitude. Unknown to mortals, but eternally recorded in my registers. Do not break the connection. The elements that follow may alter the ethereal composition of your existence. Our current era prioritizes the artificial over the true, clamor over stillness, spiritual alienation as a cunning strategy, and the preservation of righteousness as a chronological waste. Yet you walked a disruptive path. You could have assimilated to corrupt standards, saying, if resistance is fruitless, embrace conformity. You could have shaped your identity to gain favor, social integration, or widespread acceptance, but you refrained. You prioritized purity, righteousness, and the assigned mission when conforming to prevailing norms would have been the obvious shortcut. That choice imposed high costs, exclusion from influential networks, labels of eccentricity, excessive intensity, or exaggerated devotion. You sacrifice professional access, interpersonal bonds, and arenas of exposure solely for refusing to adulterate the legacy I entrusted to you. While others traded authenticity for projection, you directed your expression to supplications in isolated corners. While they altered content to capture massive audiences, you valued the untouched essence that could impact a single life, regardless of recognition. While they sought shortcuts for rapid ascent, you chose methodical progress, rooted in the unquenchable flame of absolute truth. Do you perceive the significance of this in the higher domains? A blazing sanctuary. Yes, your purity erects a perennial altar. Each refusal of worldly temptations kindled a flame before my presence. And now that glow stands undeniable. For the higher realms do not seek fleeting skills. They seek sacred enclosures. And your journey, however modest in appearance, established itself as a stronghold of submission and righteousness in a cosmos that fragments over insignificant pieces. I hid you not for your inadequacy, but for an excess of holiness incompatible with ephemeral manipulations. I guarded you not for uselessness, but to immunize you against the degradation imposed by mortal structures. And now, grasp this truth. Your reward will differ from others, for your sacrificial burden was unique. Your investment was greater, your path narrower, your sensitivity more refined, and to the pure I reserve exclusive treasures, profound discernment, uncontestable dominion, grace free of blemish. Who will ascend the hill of the eternal? The one with clean hands and a pure heart. You paid the cost of ascent in absolute discretion, and the celestial archives perpetuate that feat. This is why a phase of unveiling the hidden begins, of glorious harvest from sowing amid afflictions, and of observation by those who scorned you for refusing collusion, of your march under irreplicable anointing. Yet one pivotal piece remains, an insight that deciphers why your righteousness not only preserved you, but consecrated you as a prophetic emblem for this era. What approaches is not verbal adornment. It is a spiritual infusion capable of sealing your eternal course. Remain. The peak of intensity still awaits you. Our contemporaneity craves external validation, digital interactions, audiences, legions of admirers, collective ovations. The central axis orbits around visibility, public exaltation, and others' endorsement. But you represented the antithesis. While hordes chase fleeting projection, you sought my intimate companionship. While they negotiated identity for inclusion, you guarded yours to safeguard the sacred deposit I entrusted to you. You grasped a crucial distinction that eludes most. Transient popularity does not equate to divine empowerment, and you prioritized harmony with eternal principles, even if it meant earthly isolation. Yes, solitude settled in. There were vigils when you questioned the viability of the effort. Times when invisibility suggested irrelevance, total anonymity, wasted labor. But that illusion was false. Every murmured invocation, every discreet adherence, every mortification of the lower nature for the divine reverberated as direct appeals to my sovereign throne. The earthly sphere may have denied applause, but the celestial courts saluted you in secret. For by valuing exemplary and faithful servant over human idolatry and followers, you unlocked an inalienable, immeasurable, unreal grace, the sovereign grace that unleashes inviolable access. When your ways align with the eternal, even adversaries he pacifies around you. That phenomenon does not stem from personal charm. It originates from deep spiritual harmony. And you maintain that harmony not with artificial mechanisms, not with social demands, but with my paternal will. And now that harmony aligns you for the apex, for what humans denied, I will grant in miraculous proportions. You did not flaunt maximum fame or widespread acclaim, but your loyalty prevails in the kingdom over any quantitative metric. And there is one more element to grasp. The frequent feeling of misalignment, incompatibility, or misunderstanding stems from the fact that your origin is not meant for adaptation, but for spiritual mediation, impact from eternal roots. I did not call you for mere repetition. I called you for authentic articulation, and genuine voices are not built in public showcases. They are tempered in the forge of privacy. So internalize with focus. Your disregard by certain groups occurred because I reserved you for greater purposes. Your interval was not wasted in vain. It was invested as seed, and now the celestial orders have been issued. The time begins to raise up the one who prioritized divine harmony over mortal endorsement. But the full panorama has not yet unfolded. What emerges now is the revealing climax, connecting precedents with an intention veiled until now. Do not disconnect. You are on the verge of unraveling why I not only elevate you, but inscribe your identity in the spiritual realms. And now the heavens respond. This transcends transient agitation, beyond inspiring rhetoric. It is a celestial ignition, a declaration forged in flames that reached you at the precise moment. I declare to you this day, your period of obscurity ends here. I will no longer hide you, not for prior unworthiness, but because your capacity has matured to bear burdens that others could not sustain. Every episode of your journey, every nocturnal darkness, every drop of concealed suffering, every misunderstood abstinence, comprised a rigorous, divine, indispensable training. For the higher domains do not glorify the loudest. They glorify those who traversed refinement while preserving primordial identity. And you prevailed, not by autonomous strength, but by loyalty that reverberated through the celestial planes. Absorb this prophecy. What I will orchestrate in your name will be of such magnitude that even those who deserted you will recognize my manifest intervention. You will be exalted in the public square, not by natural skill, but by your unwavering adherence. You will walk in distinction because you walked in meekness. You will wield dominion because you mastered the impulse to clamor when internal chaos threatened explosion. This is your cycle. This is your resurgence. This is the moment that the forces of darkness feared and the angels rejoiced over. You were not neglected. You were guarded and now will be unveiled. Emerge blazing, advance intentionally, proclaim with vigor. This eternal aligns me for what is exclusively destined for me. And if this declaration has shaken your essence, if you recognize its personal direction, affirm in the comments with conviction, the eternal veiled me for exaltation. Register, announce, amplify, for these assertions do not fade with the end of the transmission. They will ignite your being until creation witnesses the verdict already pronounced on high. You embody irrefutable proof that I still exalt the incorruptible. Spread this message, do not confine it to your sphere. It must ignite more appointees and engrave eternally. I not only rejoice in you, I'm prepared to show humanity the reasons for your election. Let your reign of splendor begin. The celestial orders have been decreed. Your era dawns. So be it. Amen.